This is NBC News special coverage of the Democratic National Convention. Live from Chicago, here is Tom Llamas.
We are live tonight from Chicago as night one of the Democratic National Convention kicks off. You can see the stage just behind me. This convention and the party looking and feeling dramatically different from just a few weeks ago. Vice President Kamala Harris ascending to the top of the ticket after President Biden bowed out in a monumental shakeup to an already unprecedented race. We're taking a live look now at where all the action will take place this week. Just beside me, just below me, all around me. There are a lot of people here. There are quite a few empty seats, but that's because people are still trickling in. The action is just getting started. It's going to be a major test for Democrats working to capitalize on this newfound momentum in the hopes it carries them all the way to the White House. Vice President Harris preparing to accept the party's nomination. The question tonight, how will she introduce herself to American voters throughout this week? In just a few hours, it will be President Biden taking center stage. Earlier, we saw the president doing a walkthrough. You see him right here, getting ready to pass the torch to Harris in a primetime speech. How will he address the party that essentially pressured him to drop out? Tonight's big speakers also include First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Harris now attempting to become the first woman president and break that glass ceiling Hillary Clinton once ran on. We'll hear from a number of notable speakers this week, including former President Obama, former President Clinton, and vice presidential nominee and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Harris's opponent, former President Trump, and his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, are hoping to take back some of that spotlight hitting crucial battleground states. Right now, the race remains tight. Vice President Harris holding a narrow lead, up 4 points in a head-to-head matchup with Trump. All within the margin of error, of course. And a critical issue for voters this election, the war in Gaza. New video showing protesters outside the convention hall ripping down a barricade. Police in riot gear just on the other side. We're told several people were arrested. For the most part, they had been peaceful up until this point. Thousands are organizing outside of the DNC this week, demanding a ceasefire. The moment evoking memories of the violent protests at the 1968 convention over the war in Vietnam. But we want to be very clear here. So far, what's happened in Chicago today, tonight, right now, is nowhere near what happened in 1968. But again, this convention is just getting started. Another key question, will the new Democratic ticket chart their own path on policy or continue President Biden's legacy? As the New York Times points out today on the Harris-Walz campaign website, there is not a single policy proposal. Will Harris provide more insight into what she would do as a president at this convention? We'll learn it all this week. We have so much to get to on this historic night. Kicking things off for us is our own Peter Alexander, who joins us live from the convention floor. Peter, things are getting very loud as Representative, I think, Maxine Waters, I'm going to take a look here, is set to take the stage right now. Peter, give us a little vibe check, sort of what the floor is like and how Democrats are sort of wrestling the fact that they now have a new nominee, but they also have to sort of pass that torch to former President Biden. He has to give it to Kamala Harris.
You know, Tom, based on my conversations here, it feels like this is the start of a week-long celebration that less than a month ago was really focused on a fear of disarray and discord. That has evaporated. Walk with us as we see Maxine Waters speaking right now. We'll head up to her delegation, the Californian delegation, just up here ahead as we get a closer view of the front row, everybody returning to their seats here. You know, Tom, what's striking to me is the energy in this room, and that was among the concerns earlier. The Democrats had been a bit demoralized, but now they are delighted as new polls show that Kamala Harris right now has effectively erased Donald Trump's lead over Joe Biden. Now she is, though within the margin of error, showing the Democrats have things going in their direction right now. The latest poll, as you see, 49 to 45%, just within the margin of error. And as we speak to the folks here tonight, a lot of them are saying, you know what? All they care about is defeating Donald Trump. They love Joe Biden. They love Kamala Harris. Their priority is returning a Democrat to the White House this fall. Tom, that's where the focus is going to be on over the course of this week.
You know, Peter, one thing that strikes me as we see Representative Waters there taking the stage is sort of the institutionalism, if you will, of this convention versus what we saw with Republicans. You have former sitting presidents. You did not have that at the RNC. You have a lot of members of the Senate, of the House that are going to be speaking here. Democratic leaders who have been leaders over decades. It shows that the party at least is united on that front.
I think that's right. And in fact, you have a lot of the lawmakers who are going to be participating in the events over the course of these next several days. We're standing in front of Illinois. Tomorrow night, Illinois gets its big moment with both Michelle Obama, the former First Lady, and Barack Obama, the former president, having an opportunity to speak before this crowd. Come with me again. Let's keep walking through here. That's the fun of the convention floor on a night like this. Among those others who'll be speaking, Dick Durbin, also a senator from Illinois right now. You're going to hear from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tonight. Jim Clyburn, Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky. He's going to speak tonight. He was on that list of potential finalists for a possible VP pick for Kamala Harris. His ability to sort of speak to those rural and southern voters was something that I'm told really resonated with those in Harris's inner circle right now. Nonetheless, he's still going to be speaking on her behalf as we expect to hear from him within the next couple of hours, Tom.
Peter Alexander setting the stage for us for what's going to be an exciting week of politics. We are going to dip into that speech now. Of course, speaking as a fixture of the Democratic Party, Representative Maxine Waters of California, currently serving her 17th term. She's also the most senior black congresswoman in the House. Let's listen now.
Who I happen to know is one of Kamala's heroes. In that moment, all of us, from New York to Pennsylvania, to Arizona, to California. We can ask ourselves, is this America? And we will be able to say loudly and proudly, you're damn right it is.
We were just listening there to Representative Maxine Waters from California. For more on the start to the Democratic National Convention, joining us now is Senator Tammy Duckworth, who represents the host state of the DNC, Illinois, of course. She's also the vice chair for the Democratic National Committee. Senator Duckworth, first of all, thank you for your service. Thank you for joining our special coverage here at the DNC. I do want to ask you first, is Chicago ready for this week, and is the DNC ready for this week?
Heck yeah, we're ready for this week. We have been planning this for almost 2 years now. We have everything buttoned down tight, and as you're seeing, everything is going along very smoothly. I actually flew in a Coast Guard helicopter yesterday over the city to make sure that the security perimeter and everything was exactly where it needed to be. People are excited. The number of people asking me for credentials is skyrocketing. We're going to blow the roof off of the United Center.
You know, Senator, I do want to ask you, Peter Alexander, our correspondent who's down on the floor, said the atmosphere from the Democrats he's talked to is a atmosphere of celebration. But I do have to press you on this. I mean, this is a passing of the torch, right? But this is somewhat of a strange transition, the way this happened, right? Celebrating the president's 50 years of political service right now and tonight, with him now stepping aside, and he's essentially speaking to a party that wrestled that nomination away from him.
Well, let me make it clear. President Biden made this decision, and he, the patriot that he is, recognized the need to pass the torch, and that is exactly what he did. And we're going to celebrate him tonight. I was very, very privileged to get to meet him as he flew into Soldier Field, and we were able to welcome him to the city. We are going to give him all of his flowers. We're going to celebrate him, his 50 years of service, but also his leadership in handing off the torch to the next generation of leaders. But I got to tell you, I don't think Joe is done. I don't think Joe Biden is done. I think he's going to be like Jimmy Carter. I think he's going to be a president who's going to continue to serve this country because he cares so deeply and he loves America so much. You're going to see him continue to work on all the issues that are important to him, like the cancer moonshot, as he's already talked about. So this is not the end of Joe Biden, and he's going to be the grand leader of our party.
Senator, you know, you said you mentioned you got a chance to meet him when he landed, when he touched down here in Chicago. What was his mood like?
He was jubilant. We applauded him as he came off of Marine Corps One, and he was excited to be here. I saw him on Friday when he declared the Springfield Race Riot Act a national monument, when we were with him in the Oval Office on Friday. He is really focused on getting things done, on a peace deal in the Middle East, on the cancer moonshot, on button down his legacy. But again, as I said, I see a man who's looking forward, and he's going to be a leader of our party, and he's going to continue to do the work for many more years to come.
I think a lot of Democrats and voters are going to be looking forward to his speech tonight. Senator, you're here doing this interview. You are helping us inform our viewers on your party's positions. That is something Vice President Harris has yet to do, right? She hasn't done any news conferences. She hasn't sat down for any interviews. Do you think that'll change after this week? I mean, when will voters see her completely unscripted?
Well, we're building up to Thursday night when we nominate her, and when that happens, you're going to see the rocket fuel get ignited right here in the United Center, and she's going to bring the message out to the voters. They started already between her and Tim Walz with the bus tour, and you're going to see that we're going to carry her all the way through to the first week in November when she's going to become Madam President. It starts here in Chicago, where we tell the story of what happens when you put progressive policies like raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, like supporting working families, supporting unions, making Illinois the state that is a beacon for reproductive choice, whether that is access to reproductive health care or access to fertility treatments like IVF. That message is going to come through loud and clear because we started this convention right here in Chicago.
Senator, you mentioned all of your political service, but I thanked you at the top of this interview for also your service to our military. You served as a U.S. Army helicopter pilot, serving in the Iraq War. You left 2 legs behind. I want to get your reaction to comments made by former President Trump. Here's what he said earlier.
It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor, that's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman.
Senator, what is your reaction to those comments from former President Trump?
It's revolting, and he is not fit to be commander-in-chief of our great military. And frankly, he's a 5-time draft dodger. He is a convicted felon, and he clearly thinks that our military men and women are suckers and losers, just like what he said before. He does not deserve to be in the Oval Office, and we're going to make sure he never gets there.
Senator, Republicans have also attacked the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, the running mate for Vice President Kamala Harris here, questioning his military service, and that when it was time to go to Iraq, they essentially said he chose to run for Congress. Even the people he served with, it's sort of been a mixed bag. Some support him, saying he wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to run for Congress. He was owed that right. Others said that essentially when they knew they were going to go to Iraq, he decided to run for office. He should have stayed and fought in Iraq like people like you did for the U.S. National Guard. What do you think those criticisms are fair? Or do you think it's all politics?
I think it's politics. They're going after one of his greatest strengths. This is the Rumsfeld doctrine, right? Take your opponent's greatest asset and his greatest strength and go after it. This is Tim Walz's greatest strength. The fact that he served in uniform as an enlisted man for over 24 years of service. He was due to retire, and he retired. I mean, he stayed beyond 20 years. He stayed for 24 years. And I think it is really important that we are going to have him in the Situation Room. The world's a scary place right now, and we need military leadership. And to have someone who served formerly as a command sergeant major, somebody who served for all those 24 years, who has been there for the troops, is somebody that we need in the Situation Room, somebody that Kamala can depend on and who's going to be in touch with the military. And remember, this is the guy who fought for the PACT Act, who looked out for veterans, who made sure that our veterans who were exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances were well compensated and going to be cared for. Nobody cares more for the troops than Tim Walz, and I served with him in Congress, and I know that on a personal level.
Senator Tammy Duckworth, again, we thank you so much for your service. We thank you for hosting us here in the great state of Illinois. We're looking forward to a very exciting week of politics and all types of great speeches. Senator, again, we thank you for your service. We thank you for being here. For more on what we can expect here on night 1 of the DNC, let's bring in our political pros tonight. Senator Claire McCaskill, I should say, the former Democratic senator from Missouri, and an NBC News political analyst. Don Calloway, a Democratic strategist and host of the Caucus Room podcast. And Mark Lauder, former strategic communications director on the Trump 2020 campaign. We thank you all for joining us. I do want to preface this conversation by saying we're waiting for a very special moment that's going to happen out on stage. We're waiting for the Reverend Jesse Jackson to come out and salute essentially the convention hall. We're going to pause and bring you that live. Senator McCaskill, I want to start with you. Is this a strange moment for Democrats? Is this a happy moment for Democrats? Is this a transition moment for Democrats? You're going to have President Biden, 50 years of service, right? He has supported the Democratic Party. He ran for president. He won, and then it sort of was taken away from him. How does he handle that in his speech tonight?
Well, I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to give everyone permission to be excited about the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz ticket. he made the decision to do this, and he did it because he cares more about his country than he cares about himself. You don't see that on the other side of the equation. It is a selfless thing he did. And the Democrats who wanted him to step down was selfless. Is this Jesse?
No, you keep going, Senator.
So I really do think that by stepping aside, he has made his legacy even more legendary, because most politicians cannot ever make a decision for the good of someone else rather than themselves, and that's what he did.
Let's take you live to the stage right now, the Reverend Jesse Jackson there, along with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
And his sons.
And yeah, Reverend Jesse's son's with him as well. Of course, Reverend Jackson, a hero here in Chicago. He worked so long, the Rainbow Push Coalition based here, as other members of the Jackson family come in. Reverend Jesse Jackson also has an incredible history when it comes to presidential elections, running in 1984, running in 1988, coming very, very close, and being always a major voice and later a power broker within the party. I can tell you right now, everyone in the convention hall on their feet is a standing ovation for a man who's dedicated his life to the Democratic Party and to the causes and the rights of African Americans. Don Calloway, as we look at this, you wanted to weigh in. Tell me your thoughts.
My sons are to my left, my longtime friend, Senator, to my right from Missouri. This is an extraordinary moment. We have to remember that Jesse Jackson was on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel on April 4th, 1968. There is a long period in the 1980s where he is the center of African-American political life. So I'm so happy to see him get his flowers tonight just before the president. Jesse Jackson is an extraordinary American, and this is just a remarkable moment.
You know, and he really set the stage for people like the Reverend Al Sharpton. I covered his presidential campaign. There was a great book written called Thunder in America about the 84 campaign. And what Jesse Jackson was able to do with that campaign, essentially run as an outsider before that term was probably even coined, right? And then get to 88 and really give Democrats a run for their money. It was an incredible story.
It was an incredible story, and he won states. He won real delegates who represented him and voted for him on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. There is a through line from Dr. King to Jesse Jackson to Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. So this is extraordinary.
And an incredible communicator, too. I mean, you can't say enough.
I'll never forget the night of Super Tuesday in 2008. And then we were in a small gymnasium here in Chicago with it was like several hundred people, but it wasn't a huge crowd. And it was the night that everybody realized that Barack Obama was going to get the nomination. And I looked over to the side, and there quietly, standing against the wall, was Jesse Jackson with tears coming down his face. And I'll never forget that. And what a poignant moment that was, because he realized that what he'd worked for all those years was actually going to be realized.
Democrats can't get to the presidency. They can't get to the White House without the African-American vote. Talk to me about what Kamala Harris now at the top of this ticket means for African-Americans.
It's a special moment for African-Americans, for Indian-Americans, and particularly for women. Hillary Clinton obviously put 1 million cracks into that glass ceiling, and we don't know that Kamala Harris would have gotten there were it not for this extraordinary circumstance, but that's okay. Sometimes it takes extraordinary circumstances for history to be made. Obviously, she's not the first woman who was qualified or the first African-American who was qualified, but this is a special moment, and it really is historical. But the reality is that she is a substantive candidate who's qualified to be president. So let's not get lost in the historical value of the moment. Let's recognize that she's prepared and qualified to do the job.
I'll tell you something I did notice, and tell me why this is. I'm pulling into the convention hall, and I see vendors on the streets, and they're selling T-shirts with Kamala Harris's face on it. I don't remember seeing that for President Biden. I didn't see that for Hillary Clinton. It's been a while since I've seen that type of enthusiasm. What is it about her that you can get people, vendors like that, selling shirts? It happens a lot on the Trump side, but it hasn't happened in a while since I would say President Obama was running.
It's the recognition of the shift that this is a cultural moment now, and you cannot win the presidency, particularly as a diverse candidate, without grabbing the attention of the culture at some point. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, that's something that Joe Biden was not able to do. He is an extraordinary president, extraordinarily successful legislatively, but he had not yet captured the zeitgeist. It shows that transition has happened. happen for this Harris-Walz campaign.
Mark, I want to bring you in. It's been a tough couple of weeks for the Trump campaign. It seems like the former president hasn't figured out yet exactly how to run against Kamala Harris, right? He's focused on strange things like he's better looking, he says, than she is. He's focused on other things that maybe voters wouldn't really care about. Crowd sizes, AI, things like that. Do you think he's just sort of lost it a little bit, become undisciplined, or were they so confident they were going to win this that now with this new candidate they've been thrown for a curve?
Well, I think if you actually break down what he's saying, he is covering all the major issues. He's talking about the economy. He's talking about energy prices. He's talking about the border. He is obviously, going on, mentioning the other items that you've mentioned, and that's what I know many in the media like to focus on. But for those who are actually listening to what he says, he's actually talking about real policy solutions to lower gas and grocery prices, to deal with the southern border. Well, basically, Kamala Harris has zero policies on her website. She's got more pronouns than policy, and good vibes and energy isn't going to deal with the issues that really matter to the American people. And I think that's why she's not going even further in the polls. She's technically still losing based on where Joe Biden was in 2020 by 5 to 6 points where he was then versus now.
Right, but there are polls right now that show her ahead of former President Trump, especially in some swing states. Don, I do want to get to you. Republicans do have a point. No news conferences. There's been no sit down with a major interviewer, right? They're talking about unscripted moments. The New York Times today pointing out on their own website, there's no policies there. What's going on?
Well, it's significant that Kamala Harris has chosen not to let the media shape the narrative of her campaign. She gave her first major policy speech last week, but she recognized that to some significant degree, mainstream media tanked President Biden's candidacy and had a lot to do with him getting out of here, and she's not going to let that happen to her.
Claire, you know this. Voters deserve to hear from candidates unscripted. Don't the voters deserve to hear from her? Unscripted challenge. She's going to have to face off with people like Vladimir Putin, with Kim Jong-un, right? Shouldn't voters know that she can stand there tested?
I think they will before the election. And, with all due respect, the policies that Trump talks about, it's not like there's a lot of detail there. He says, like, I'll get it to you in 2 weeks, my health care policy. It's going to be better than Obamacare.
I think the comparisons were to, like, Hillary Clinton, who came out with lots of policies. Joe Biden, 110-page document when he ran.
That's been a problem for the Democrats. They get so far in the weeds on policy, they lose the narrative that they're the ones fighting for the people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's fighting for Donald Trump. That's very clear. What's going to be clear after this week is that the Democrats are fighting for the people of this country, and I think her policies will reflect that.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't remember any of Trump's speeches being full of policy, just grievance.
Claire, I want to ask you a tough question. I'm going to put this back. I'm going to tell our director to pull up the New York Times story we had from the weekend. It was a profile, right? And legendary Democratic strategist James Carville was quoted in this, right? And it was about politicians who stay in office too long. And he says, it's a human story that repeats itself. He says, hell, the day after Bill Clinton got elected and everyone knew I wasn't going into government with him, the phone just stopped ringing. I used to literally get the shakes thinking nobody gave a crap about me anymore. That's why the only way people leave Washington is in a pine box or in handcuffs. This power stuff is addictive. Do you think Carville's read on this is right? Is that why it took President Biden so long to maybe realize that this wasn't his time anymore?
I think history is full of folks that have a hard time letting loose of power and have a hard time measuring their power in terms of not going too far. I think we've got a good example of that in Donald Trump. He doesn't want his power to be limited by anything. He's said he'll do away with the Constitution on day one. Now, I don't care if it's hyperbole or not. It's a stupid thing to say in the United States of America. So I do think that I've seen tragic examples of people staying in Washington too long. And I say to all of my friends who are getting on in years, come on out here in the real world. It's fine. I feel guilty. I'm so happy I'm not in Washington anymore.
Yeah. Mark, final question to you. When do you think sort of the Trump campaign hammers it down, maybe gets a little more disciplined and figures out how to campaign and run against this new ticket? Or do you think they already have?
I think they already have. I mean, about $100 million in advertising has just been reserved in the key battleground states. We have Kamala's own words to use against her, whether it's supporting the Green New Deal, whether it's free health care and amnesty for illegal immigrants, soft on crime. Now she wants to raise taxes and take basically a page of socialism with government price controls. All we have to do is use Kamala's words against her, and the American people know that's not the answer. Things were more affordable, the world was safer, our border was more secure when Donald Trump was in office. All the other problems created by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Mark Lauder, Don Calloway, Senator Claire McCaskill, so great for this conversation, a great kickoff to this convention. We thank you for that. While we get ready to hear from President Biden tonight, just outside of the DNC, thousands of protesters have gathered, many here to protest the Biden administration's response to the war in Gaza. Several people were arrested just moments ago. For more on this, Maggie Vespa joins us live now. Maggie, talk to us about the situation out there and what we saw, I think, happen about an hour ago.
Yeah, so Tom, actually police have shut this down swiftly. You can see the fence behind us has been restored. This is the perimeter that a couple of protesters breached earlier today, and then police with riot gear moved in. We have video from some of the chaos. Just like you said, in the last hour or so, we had a crowd of about 6,000 people that marched through the city, ending here roughly a block from the United Center, and again, breaching the barrier, facing off with police in riot gear just inside this fence. 4 of them, according to Chicago PD, were arrested. For some context here, this is a largely pro-Palestinian protest. People here demanding the vice president and the Democratic Party commit to a ceasefire in Gaza and end America's support of Israel. Obviously, Tom, tensions boiling over, but I got to tell you, Chicago police moved in swiftly. They shut this down quickly, already clearing this park out, which was incredible to watch.
Yeah, Maggie, I wanted to ask you about that. I don't see a single protester behind you. Where'd they go?
Yeah, you're not wrong. They went every which direction they could. I mean, we watched police move in from multiple directions, and it was basically 3 sides of the park were kind of pushed back. We're going to swing around this way if we can and show you, like, this is the park that we were in earlier today. It's completely clear. We have signs on the ground. People left this fast that they just left their signage here and kind of scattered in every which direction. Some of them, it seems like, went back to the park north of here where this initially started. Some of them kind of went back toward the east side of the city. Basically every which way they could, Tom. Police moved in very quickly, and after those 4 arrests happened, people were pretty quick to get out of here.
Is it your understanding that that's it for the night? Are they regrouping and coming back later as President Biden is set to take the stage in prime time, or is that it?
As far as the organized march goes, it was only this one-and-done event, and they knew that they were doing that hours before President Biden was set to speak. So as far as the size that we saw earlier and kind of the organized marching efforts, I would be really surprised if they came back out today. They plan to be back at their starting point about a half-mile from here by 4. Then things kind of got out of control here. We could, of course, see some factions break off and sort of protest throughout the city tonight, and we'll be watching for that, of course. But it seems to be largely a one-and-done with that caveat in mind.
All right, Maggie Vespa going to be covering the protest for us all week. Maggie, we appreciate that. Back to the convention floor now. As we've mentioned, in just a few hours, we'll hear from President Biden in what is expected to be a bittersweet moment for the Democratic Party. Biden now officially passing the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris. The highly anticipated speech coming nearly a month after Biden withdrew from the presidential race. For more on this historic moment, Mike Memoli joins us now from here at the DNC. Mike, I'm so honored that we have you tonight because I don't know if there's any reporters out there that have covered Biden as long as you have, that know the Biden family, know the Biden insiders as much as you do. I guess my question is, how much of this speech do you expect is going to be building Vice President Kamala Harris up, and will there be any sort of score settling?
Well, Tom, I think one of the reasons why this speech is so anticipated tonight for everyone in this room is because it's worth underscoring just how dramatic and for some Democrats traumatic the last 2 months has been since that debate performance from the president on June 27th. Whether Democrats wanted him to stay in the race or whether they were some of those who had concerns and wanted him out of the race, they want to shower him with love, with admiration for his decades of service to the party. Now, as I've been talking to people close to the president, they say his mission in some ways hasn't changed. He still wants to use this moment to underscore what he thinks are the stakes of this election, that he thinks Donald Trump still is a threat to democracy, and he's going to ask everyone in this room and everyone watching at home to do their part to make sure he is kept from the Oval Office. He also wants to use this moment to talk up his vice president. He understands that he still has some work to do, as does the party as a whole, in consolidating that Biden-Harris coalition around her. There is such a close margin in this election, even though Harris is outperforming where Biden was. They can't take any vote for granted. So he's going to talk about the progress he sees this country having gone through in the last 4 years and the ways in which his vice president has been an important part of that. As for the score settling, Tom, it's been said, including by the First Lady herself, her husband doesn't hold grudges, she holds them for him. And so part of her role role tonight is going to be thanking those Democrats who did stay loyal to her husband, and that's going to be an important part of this evening as well.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that speech either. You know, Mike, not that you described it this way, but it can't all be puppies and unicorns and rainbows for Joe Biden. Is he resentful? Is he angry? Is he disappointed? I know that may not show through in the speech tonight, but what have you heard about his headspace since he had to sort of give the ticket over to Kamala Harris?
Well, it's clear that he has obviously a good amount of disappointment still, that he is not coming into this convention tonight, having that moment, which, by the way, he was deprived of 4 years ago. Remember, because of COVID-19, after decades of being a loyal party soldier, he did not get this kind of atmosphere when he accepted the Democratic nomination. But as I was talking to one very close advisor in the last few days, they said, listen, he's made a decision and he's moved on. Yes, they acknowledge that a lot of the people around him haven't. But I also think it's important to point this out, Tom. He is maybe not going to enjoy all these tributes in the way that people might assume that he will, because he has kind of seen this movie before. Remember, in 2016, he wanted to run for president in 2016 as the sitting vice president. He obviously did not make that decision to do so in part because of the death of his son, Beau, but he also did that because he felt that President Obama, other senior Democrats did not support him in making that potential decision to enter the race. And so as he watched the tributes 8 years ago at the convention, there was a long 6-minute tribute video. There was an outpouring of an affection for him 8 years ago. He has seen this movie before, and so it may not quite land as much as people might think for this outgoing president the way they expect it to.
Mike Memoli, again, always great to have you in the show. Now we're going to talk to you throughout the week. A key voting bloc Democrats are relying on come November, young people. There are nearly 8 million Americans who can vote for the first time this election. Data out from Tufts University showing 5 states have already registered more young voters than turned out in 2020, including the battleground states of Nevada and Michigan. A recent New York Times Siena College poll of likely voters in the battleground states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin show Harris with a 15-point lead among likely voters under 30. And the issues driving these young voters to the polls: the economy, specifically cost of living, reproductive rights, the environment, and of course gun control, all top of mind in a recent survey of young voters in battleground states. Joining me now is someone who has that pulse on what young Democratic voters are looking for. David Hogg, a survivor of the Parkland shooting and co-founder of March for Our Lives. He's also the president of Leaders We Deserve, an organization, a PAC, I should say, focused on electing young progressives in politics. So, David, thanks so much for joining our special coverage. Why do young voters like Kamala Harris?
Ultimately, I think it's that they're excited for somebody new. We didn't want to have a rematch of 2020, but also they've seen her deliver repeatedly with the administration on passing the first gun law in our lifetimes, in 30 years. Those voters that you just talked about. We hadn't passed a gun law until just a few years ago after Uvalde. She's also the director of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and we've seen massive action on climate, the largest climate spending, not just in American history, but in human history from this administration. And I think that's why they're really excited. And of course, we can't forget about reproductive rights, especially, which is a top issue, especially for young women.
You work to get progressive leaders elected. How do you fall on the Biden-Harris administration when it comes to Gaza? It's been a problem for Democrats. Progressives have not been happy with the way that Palestinians, especially those children in Gaza, have been treated. The war is ongoing. There is no ceasefire. Where do you land on it?
We need a ceasefire, right? And I know the vice president has called for that, but we also know that what we've been doing out there, frankly, you know, I'm not a foreign policy expert, but I don't think you need to be one to know that what we're doing hasn't been working. The strategy that we've been using hasn't been working. The hostages are still there, and there's still a war going on. And ultimately, I got involved in this because of violence at my school. I don't want to see this horrific violence continue anywhere, period.
Yeah. You know, in every election, people talk about the young vote. The young vote, will the young vote matter? Do you think the young vote turns out in 2024, and why?
Well, it will. It will turn out and vote because we've been voting consistently at the highest rates ever in American history for the past 3 election cycles. And we know that when people vote 3 times, they basically vote for the rest of their lives, or they're much less likely to not vote again. And I think they're going to continue that momentum into this election. We saw that again in 2022, even when there wasn't a presidential election. So I think those young people are going to continue turning out. But that's part of what I'm doing with Leaders We Deserve, is working to give these young people other young people to vote for. And if anybody wants to know more about that, they can just go to leaderswedeserve.com.
Since you endorsed Harris, she selected Governor Tim Walz to be a running mate. I know you were behind him just from the get-go. I know, I know you really liked him. But talk to me about how you came to that moment, because he has evolved on gun control, right?
Yes.
He was supported by the NRA. At one point, he had to give back a donation from the NRA after the shooting in Vegas. And a conversation after Parkland with his daughter as well. He's an avid hunter. He obviously served. Do you trust him? Do you feel like he's gonna listen to you and he's not just saying things just to get elected and changing policies just to get votes?
Look, I've talked a lot with Governor Walz, especially in the lead up to the picking of him as the VP, because I was so excited about him because he has that credibility. He's ran in a super tough district multiple times, and he understands what it means to be a responsible gun owner, but he also understands that that doesn't mean that our kids should fear for their lives in schools. You know, I grew up around guns myself. I think most Americans agree with that, and what I look for isn't whether or not what promises they make me, but have they delivered in the past on this. And what we've seen from Governor Walz is an evolution where he not only renounced his support from the NRA and gave those donations that he took to charity, but then passed multiple gun laws in Minnesota and allocated over $50 million to fight gun violence in the state. And I trust him. I do, because if you're campaigning on this and you're out there saying that we're going to ban assault weapons, there's no incentive not to do that.
All right. David Hogg, we thank you for joining our special coverage tonight.
Thank you so much, Robin.
All right, we'll have much more tonight as our special coverage of the DNC continues. We're just hours away from President Biden's keynote speech. One of the president's former speechwriters joins us next with some insight. We're going to have much more from Chicago on this historic night when we come right back.
I'm sure none of you out there, when you were just told that Joe Biden was going to be the speaker, wondered who in God's name is Joe Biden.
Let me say it as simply as I can. Yes, I accept your nomination to run and serve with Barack Obama.
Here and now, I give you my word. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I'll be an ally of the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together.
More closely. That was a look back at some of the President Biden's most significant moments speaking at the DNC after 50 years of public service. This will be the 13th convention Biden attends, and it could be his most significant. Joining us now is Jeff Nussbaum. He's a former special assistant and senior speechwriter to President Biden. Jeff, you were telling me yourself maybe you possibly worked on some of those speeches there.
Yeah, I didn't have my audio on, so I wasn't hearing them.
You weren't sure. You couldn't listen to your beautiful words. Yeah. I do want to ask you, this is going to be a different type of speech, and I was talking to Mike Memley about this. It's sort of a strange moment for him, right? 50 years in public service, literally given his life to the Democratic Party, and the nomination was taken away from him. Do you think we're going to hear only things that are positive about Kamala Harris, or do you think there'll be an undertone of some bad blood?
Oh, I don't think you'll hear or see any bad blood, but I do think you'll start to see a through line that runs through all of President Biden's service. As we were just talking before, I started to look at his Senate farewell in 2009, which was the last time he sort of closed a chapter. 2016 was a little different. He wasn't running. He was supporting Hillary. And so in that speech, he talked about how much America can change when people devote their life to service. Yeah. And so I think there's a thread there that goes through his presidency as well, how much America's changed and how much it's changed under his presidency.
He's obviously a much older man. Right, that's clear. I don't think that there's a debate anymore about that. Do you think he still has it at times to sort of telegraph and just deliver what he really feels in his heart at this point?
Yeah, I think at his best, he is still one of the best. And I think, he always thinks of this as a conversation. And so I think you'll hear him sort of have that conversation. I also think that there's something really interesting that's happening here, which is, if you look at, again, the sort of through lines, this is a guy who, when he declared he was running for president, it was to restore the soul of the nation, rebuild America's middle class, rebuild our infrastructure, and serve as a bridge. And so he gets to stand up and say, I'm that rarest of presidents that's kept all the promises I've made.
We were talking with Mike about Dr. Joe Biden as well, and Mike pointed out that she has said that he doesn't hold grudges. The president, she does. What do you think about her speech tonight? What do you think we're going to get from her?
She has always been kind of the angel on his shoulder, or maybe the devil, or maybe the devil.
Doesn't sound like the angel, but
yeah. I think she gets to talk about a partnership because she's been on this journey with him, and she has witnessed the sacrifices, like the real personal sacrifices that go into a lifetime of service. And so to the extent that she can set people up and remind people of how much he's given to this country, he doesn't need to do that work.
Yeah. There are a lot of political junkies that are watching tonight. You told me that you've worked on the speeches at these conventions for years. Give me your top 3 most memorable moments of just the speeches that really resonated with you.
Well, certainly Obama 2004, and it was.
Oh, I was there. I saw that one.
Yeah, and that was hilarious.
Everyone's like, "What's this guy's name?" Wow.
Yeah, and people came out of the rehearsal room. Like on paper, we were like, "Oh yeah, this looks like it'll be nice," and then people came out of the rehearsal room and said, "This is one of the few you want to go to the floor to see."
Yeah, I remember reporters were going, "Wait, what's his name?"
Yeah.
Right after.
Right.
And that launched really that put him into the political stratosphere right after.
In people's memory, they think it was like huge. It was 16 minutes. 16 minutes from being unknown to being a future president.
Yeah.
So that's what these speeches can do. I think Jennifer Granholm had a ton of fun in 2012, sort of taking down Mitt Romney and speaking up for Detroit auto workers. That was a fun one. And then the ones I look for all the time are the terribly named real people, the people who didn't seek politics and didn't seek celebrity, but just get on stage and tell their stories. I find those the most
and
emotional.
blow the roof off the place,
yeah,
right? That
and
happens
I find
all the time.
So real and so powerful.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for talking to us. We really do appreciate it.
Great
we
to be
thank
with
you
you.
for being here, and I know it's going to be an exciting convention over the next 4 days.
Should be.
All right. We are live tonight from Chicago as night 1 of the DNC gets underway. The energy around the Democratic Party shifting significantly since President Biden exited the race. Will the Harris campaign be able to keep up the momentum? We have much more of our special coverage just ahead. We are back now with our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention live from Chicago. And as this week kicks off, all eyes are on the Harris campaign as they rally the Democratic Party around the vice president. For more on this campaign and the unprecedented nature of this convention, I want to bring in NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd and senior political correspondent for Puck News, Tara Palmeri. Thank you both for being here. So, Chuck, you've covered a lot of conventions. You've been in this game for decades. Have you ever covered a convention like this where you have an incumbent who's going to speak to the party who had the nomination wrestled away from him?
Well, obviously not. We've not. LBJ didn't come. Right, in 68 he didn't come. The closest I can come to, at least of having an atmosphere like this, is a little bit of 2000. And Al Gore came into his convention week. He was trailing George W. Bush. Clinton was sort of hanging over his head, and they had to give Monday night to Bill. And they sort of got the Bill thing out of the way. He did it. And by the end of that convention, he rallied, and it became, the convention worked. It made him a worthy potential successor, and it was a much more competitive race. Obviously, we know how it ended. So I guess that's the closest I can come to sort of what we're going to experience tonight. But look, it's...
you think there's surprises tonight?
I doubt it, because at the end of the day, Joe Biden is a good party member. Yeah. He's a good soldier. That's what has made him successful and why he didn't get the presidency for so long. He's always done the correct thing in the party. Like Bill Clinton broke, he wanted to break some glass to change the party. Barack Obama was willing to break glass to change the party. That's actually not who Joe Biden is. He always wanted to be a good soldier, and he sometimes would get bitter that it wasn't rewarded more. That I cheered whoever
and he essentially did what the party wanted this time.
And he did the same thing this time. I am curious how enthusiastic he sounds about it.
Terry, you cover Republicans a lot. They're foaming at the mouth, right? Just railing on the media. No news conferences for Harris. No sit-down interviews. The questions.
How come you haven't made this happen, Tom?
Yeah.
She's doing interviews with content creators today instead of,
So let's call it the Harris honeymoon, right? When does the Harris honeymoon end? Because at some point she's going to have to sit down. She's going to have to do a serious interview. She's going to have to go unscripted, maybe even a full news conference, but it has to happen.
Oh, absolutely has to happen. And, we're starting to see her talk to reporters. Like yesterday, she spoke to some reporters in Pittsburgh, and they asked her, how are you going to pay for your economic plan, right? And she didn't really make a lot of sense. She just kept saying over and over again, it would be a return on investment. It would be a return on investment. Yeah. She said it 4 times over a, 30, 60 second, and it just wasn't very strong. You could tell she's a little rusty when she's not on her teleprompter, and she hasn't always done well in the past when in a one-on-one, when you saw what happened with your colleague Lester Holt. And so I think that this is actually a disservice to her. They're really building this up to be a very momentous moment when she finally sits down with a network anchor, and she could make one wrong move, and that's the entire news cycle.
Talk to me about it.
This drives me nuts how many political strategists are their own worst enemy. They always want to limit. Look, I think this is what, if Biden is angry that he does not, that this isn't his convention, you should blame everybody around him. You could have set the country up over the last 3 years to get used to Grandpa Joe if they let Grandpa Joe out there all the time. And look, over time, people got used.
The debate was a shocker for people.
Right,
you know?
because they hadn't seen any version of it. But maybe if they had seen it, there would have been more tolerance for it. And you do exactly what Tara said. They are making it so that the first interview she does
will be so much pressure.
Becomes a huge pressure. I'm not as convinced they're going to do the big sit down with
Chuck,
a traditional network. I think you'll see them with more what I would call allied media.
Right.
And I think that's more likely.
And that's what Joe Biden did, yeah.
And that's what Donald Trump does. He's not going to unfriendly places anymore.
Look,
we
come
to,
from
but
this.
He doesn't anymore.
Obviously, we're all reporters here. We want to ask questions. We want to inform our viewers and our readers. So in this sense, we do have a dog in this fight. But I do want to ask you, could this really happen? I mean, early voting is going to start very soon.
Yeah.
Could early voting start without her having really been scrutinized by the media at all?
Well, it depends on your definition of scrutinizing.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, all we have is her last campaign.
Right.
And you would think this is something that I wouldn't want if I was the Harris campaign.
Right.
But the campaign stuff you don't want out there. Paints her much more liberal.
And do it now, before you're close to November.
Right. So it does, in that sense, that's surprising. But, you know, the way everything gets weaponized on social media, there's a reason why, you know, unfortunately, why you see fewer and fewer elected officials sitting down with truly sort of dispassionate media, I call it.
Yeah.
They won't do it because the fear is not the questions we ask. The fear is the one bad answer they get that gets weaponized and used over and over again. And it's in her head.
Yeah.
She has always had this issue because Fox, early on in this vice presidency, took every wrong moment and just amplified. And it impacted her.
Yeah.
She was constantly, and that's why she actually took a lower profile for a while. So it impacted that White House staff.
It feels like, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Chuck, it feels like, I don't want to say she's running away from Biden's record, but she's trying to run her own race. Sure. And I bring this up because you have a one-term president, vice president. George H.W. Bush, he had 8 years of Reagan.
Yep.
Al Gore, 8 years of Clinton. It was hard for them to remove, if you want to call it, the stink of the incumbent there.
Right.
But it feels like Harris doesn't have that problem. Am I wrong?
No, and because the voters wanted him out. Right? Yeah. Why is the party rallying around her? They don't love Kamala Harris. They're relieved that it's somebody other than Biden.
Yeah.
And that's what this convention has to do, is to turn that energy from just being, oh, at least it's not Biden energy, to, hey, we really like her.
Yeah.
She's a movement. She's now larger than life. This is what this convention's job. Look, this is what I would go back to the Al Gore comparison. That was the success of his convention. He was able to finally become his own person. In fact, that is symbolically that kiss, the infamous kiss with Tipper. Yeah. But we laugh about it. But remember, people didn't love the marriage of the Clintons.
Yeah.
They wanted to, oh, look, this is different. This is this. So she does, I do think they should continue to try to separate her. Look, I think this is the last time you see Joe Biden in a major campaign appearance on behalf of Harris. I don't think we're going to see him much on the trail.
Yeah, apparently he leaves to Southern California after this, which is also somewhat interesting. He gives a speech. He's here for night one, and then I guess he did. I don't want to say he disappears, but he's gone. We'll find out more about that. Tara, get us up to speed on the Trump campaign, because they're having some issues, right?
Yeah.
It has been very tough for them the past couple of weeks. He's also been, undisciplined. He's talked about his looks, that he's better looking than Vice President Kamala Harris. Talked about AI creating crowd size. There's just been all types of sort of tangents he's gone on. And obviously the media's locked onto that. But it sort of seems like someone who's not sure yet how to run against Kamala Harris. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely fair. His team keeps telling him to paint her as a radical San Francisco liberal and to go back to her policies like on fracking, on single payer, health insurance, et cetera. But he just can't get over the fact that there's so much momentum, that this has become a movement. Yeah, and he's upset that he's not running against Joe Biden anymore. He saw victory. It was so close, right in his grips, and he lost it. And he's just one of those people who obsesses over the past. I mean, look, he can't get over the 2020 election that he lost. So
can't get over the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. That's true too. Yeah. So right now, instead of looking inward and thinking, hey, maybe it doesn't exactly make sense for me to attack Brian Kemp, the very popular governor of Georgia, who in a state I need to win, or maybe go after Kamala Harris for her race and gender, make her seem foreign. He's going around and looking at his team and thinking, you know what, I could use a shakeup right now. Let's just disrupt the equilibrium and bring back some yes men. Let's bring back people who tell me all my great ideas are great, rather than the people around me who are saying, hey, maybe you should probably stick to the policy and her record, because truly her record from the first time she ran in the primaries is pretty liberal, and he could run on that as a contrast, but he's struggling to break through when he's going in all these wacko directions that just ups. And this is what the independent voters, they don't know who Kamala Harris is, mainly because she hasn't done interviews, and it's a good moment.
But I will say that this has taken so many strange turns that if I'm the Trump campaign, I'm thinking, listen, okay, let her have her moment. Let's wait a minute and let's see what happens.
True, but this isn't a hard race to prosecute for Republicans, which is why they keep going, what are you doing? This is arguably 1988 rerun. And George H.W. Bush took the advice, turned Michael Dukakis into an other, that he's too liberal for America.
And I think he was down by 17 at his convention.
And the thing is, though, that Trump doesn't have the discipline that a George H.W. Bush had to prosecute that campaign. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's more than, by the way, I think this is, I had somebody tell me close to Trump, this is more than just wishing he could be running against Biden. He doesn't get to avenge 2020 if Biden's not the person he defeats.
Right.
So it is eating away. 2020 now will never go away for him.
Yes.
And that is what he's not over. And that's what, you know, that's why I think he's so discombobulated.
All right, Chuck, Todd, Tara Palmeri, I know we're going to continue the conversation. We thank you guys for being here. Our special coverage of the DNC continues. Big-name speakers, including First Lady Jill Biden and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, set to kick off night one of the convention. We're going to have much more from Chicago. Stay with us. We are back now with our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention as we look towards the rest of the night. I want to bring in moderator of Meet the Press, Kristen Welker. Kristen, so great to see you here, the first night of the convention. I want to talk to you about all the sort of women speakers, the girl power we're going to see tonight, because there are some very consequential people that are speaking tonight. Let's start with Senator, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What do you expect that we're going to hear from her tonight?
I think that she is going to speak about Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign in historic terms. Remember, it was Hillary Clinton, and I covered her campaign, Tom, who ran in 2016 and talked about breaking that highest glass ceiling. I think we're going to hear about that tonight. Here's what's notable about that. You haven't really heard that from Kamala Harris. She's not leaning into necessarily the historic nature of her campaign, but Secretary Clinton can do that and can sort of remind people, because remember what the purpose of this entire week is to reintroduce people to Kamala Harris. So I think that's part of what Hillary Clinton sees as her charge.
Yeah, it's a great observation, because you're right. There's been so much that's happened in the last 2 weeks that it's easy to forget sort of the historic nature both of her race, that she's going to be a woman, she could possibly win this all. It would be a lot of firsts. But you're right, she hasn't been sort of completely just showering voters with that factoid, if you will.
She hasn't. And I interviewed Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer this weekend, and I asked her, should she be leaning more into the historic nature of her campaign? And she said, look, that's not how she is running this campaign. Yes, it is true. She is a woman. Yes, she is a woman of color. She embraces that proudly, but it's not what she's leading with. I spoke with someone who's familiar with her thinking, who said, look, she believes the powerful way to reach out to and galvanize not just Democrats. Obviously, Democrats are very energized right now around this campaign, but in order to win over independents, moderate Republicans, undecided voters, those voters who you need to win the White House, she believes she has to talk about the positive vision she has for the future. Now, the question I have is, will we start to get more details about what
when is that going to happen?
In that vision?
Republicans have been calling for that.
Exactly.
Dr. Jill Biden, do you think she sets this convention on fire? Is she apolitical? Does she settle scores?
No, she's not going to set this convention on fire. I do have new reporting, though, that I will tell you that, look, President Biden, First Lady Jill Biden, yes, they still feel stung by what happened.
Right,
this is not the convention they envisioned. This is not how they imagined this unfolding. But that's not what we're going to see tonight. But she's really going to pay tribute, I think, to her husband's legacy and give a full-throated endorsement of Vice President Harris. She's going to start to create the permission structure, I think, for Democrats not to feel bad about the fact that they replaced the top of their ticket. And then I think you're going to see President Biden really take that home, pass the torch in an official way tonight, and really send the message to Democrats it is time to turn the page.
And you think with President Biden, no surprises, right? Chuck thought the same thing, no surprises tonight. He'll be a loyal member of the party. It's got to be hard. It was taken away from him.
It's got to be incredibly hard. It is the backdrop of this campaign, so I think the tone will be what we'll be watching for as much as the words that he says tonight. But I don't think there are going to be any surprises. I also don't think this is going to be his final speech. He does not see this as his capstone speech of his political career. He sees this as a moment to, yes, talk about his legacy, and he will, but he also sees this first and foremost as a moment to pass the torch and to send that message to Democrats and the rest of the country. Kamala Harris is the person to win the White House.
But to be clear, he'll speak and then he leaves.
And then he leaves. Then he's going to California with the First Lady. The optics of that, Tom, are extraordinary. He was supposed to speak on Thursday. Instead, he's starting this whole convention off, and then he's skipping out of town.
Kristen Welker, we thank you for all your analysis. I know we're going to be spending a lot of hours talking about everything that's happening on the stage behind us. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of our special coverage of the Democratic National Convention. I'm Tom Llamas here in Chicago. We have so much great coverage ahead. Stay right there. Hallie Jackson joins me for more of our special coverage as we get into some of the more of the big speakers tonight, including Dr. Jill Biden, Senator Hillary Clinton, AOC in the House, and of course, President Biden later tonight. Our continuing coverage on NBC News Now continues.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.